2023 had a lot of big games. They were so big in fact, I only had time to play a couple of them. This year, instead of doing a big list of all the games I finished, instead I'm going to cover a wide variety of games I played this year, and then at the end, give a top 3 for the games I thought really stood out. Anyway, here are some games I played this year that I thought were pretty good. To start, I want to touch on a couple of games I liked, but I think had way too many flaws to really give them the title of Game of the Year. First is Final Fantasy XVI, which had some cool moments and an interesting story, but the amount of filler you had to go through to get to those cool parts left a sour taste in my mouth. The game was just way too long. If it was like half the length of what it ended up being, I think it would have held up a lot better. The combat was also a bit too repetitive, with it mostly consisting on doing the same moves over and over again until the enemy was dead. The other thing I had a problem with was the time it took to get from place to place. This game was on PS5, but it didn't really feel like it because everything was so slow and took forever. Compared to Final Fantasy XV, which had a pretty decent fast travel system, this felt way more of a slog. The other game I want to mention is of course Tears of the Kingdom. This game also had some cool moments, but a lot of the game was also very fillery. The sky is cool enough, with some cool minigame challenges like the skydiving one, or going down a mountain, but the depths is just endless grinding. And at a point I just felt like I was progressing for the sake of it instead of actually enjoying exploring and finding new areas. That alongside the main overworld being largely the same as Breath of the Wild, the whole idea of building shit being tedious as all hell, and also the fact they failed to fix many of the complaints from Breath of the Wild, like the dungeons, climbing, and weapon durability. I now honestly think I like Tears less than Breath of the Wild overall. Even though there are some things I prefer in Tears of the Kingdom, the amount of annoying parts in Tears of the Kingdom, along with the shrines being worse now, and even more formulaic, Breath of the Wild just feels like the more enjoyable game to play. Now I want to cover some games I liked, but I didn't really have enough time to play them properly, so I'm not sure if my thoughts on them will change later on. First off is Jusant, which is a nice, calming climbing game that uses very basic shapes for graphics. The game is similar to the rock climbing game in Wii Fit, but instead of using the balance board, you use the controller. Anyway, I find the game pretty relaxing to play and has some decent puzzles that make it fun enough. It's also one of the first games to use Unreal Engine 5, so it uses all of the new features that includes, like Lumen and Nanite. Although since the graphics are very basic, with the game's graphics mainly being rock climbing shapes and textureless geometry, it's not exactly the best game to showcase it off. Still, the game looks very nice and plays well without the climbing being a pain to control. In a world where every game of climbing is boring and a pain to get through, it's nice to see a game about climbing that's actually fun and not a chore to play. Another game I liked that I didn't have much time to play was Mamade no Bakaru, which is a Japanese-only Switch game made by the developers of Yoshi's Crafted World, Good Feel. This is an oriental Japanese kind of game inspired by the likes of Goemon. The idea is you go around Japan hitting things with sticks while fighting a so-called festival army. The highlight of the game is much like Yoshi's Crafted World, the amount of variety in the levels. Each level is very unique with different themes and obstacles. In one level you enter a racetrack and race alongside other enemies. The only problem I have with it so far is the frame rate, with it rarely hitting 60 FPS, but I don't mind it that much. Either way, the game plays great and so far I've had a great time with it, despite not being able to understand much of what is happening. Kirby Return to Dreamland is a game I've already beaten, but I wanted to highlight the remake that came out this year, due to all the extra minigames it offers. To start, they added an epilogue mode of sorts for Magolor, which doesn't really do much for me, but the other mode, Merry Magoland, is great, with it offering a shit ton of minigames, although they are pretty basic in scope. My favourite ones are probably the Blooming Blasters one, which is kinda like Wii Tanks, though with big bazookas, and Ninja Dojo, which is kinda like the Nintendo Land Ninja Castle game, with more focus on accuracy. These games are great if you have someone to play with, but since they are pretty short, they can get old quick, so I would try playing multiple at once. Number 3. Of all the games that would be in my Game of the Year list this year, an eShop only $5 game was not one I was expecting. But this game is so addicting, I kinda had to put it on. Suika Game seems very simple and easy at first, but as you get into it, the challenge increases dramatically, and the decisions you made earlier on come back to bite you in the ass. Basically, you drop fruit, and when you get two fruit together that match, they form a bigger fruit. You keep doing this until you make a watermelon. The problem is, when the fruit reach the top of the bowl, they overflow and the game ends. This can seem easy, but when the fruit decide to fly to the top randomly, it gets very frustrating. The bigger the fruits are, the easier it is for them to get stuck as well, leaving the fruit below to pile up, increasing the likelihood of it overflowing. So far my top score is around 3,000, but some people have managed to get way beyond that, which I have no idea how. Once you get one watermelon, getting the second one is a real challenge. Number 2. A lot of people seem to think that I was too negative in my review for this, but I think that's due to the lack of problems this game has. I would say this game is the most flawless game of the year, with only some minor nitpicks. The biggest issue I have that I didn't mention in my review is probably the bosses. The only boss you really fight is Bowser Jr., and despite his moveset changing in each castle, it still feels very similar. Even the new Super Mario Bros. Games changed up a bit, with the Koopalings offering some variety. But the fact that these are the only real complaints I have with this game show how strong it comes off. With the massive amount of variety in each level, and cool new game mechanics, this game is up there with the best 2D Marios, and I hope they don't stop making them and have another hiatus. Much like my number 1 pick. Number 1. Of course it's Pikmin 4, how could it not be? Pikmin 3 is one of my favourite games of all time, and although 4 might not reach the heights of 3, it still delivers strongly. It might not be as flawless as Mario Wonder, but I found the areas and gameplay to be a lot more enjoyable to play through. Along with the post-game, which is almost as long as the main game itself, the areas are great, with them offering many cool treasures to get, and the Ice Pikmin are very cool if you know what I mean. Oatchi the dog is a great new addition, with it being very strong, and it makes it less tedious to go around the map, since you could do a dash attack and run with the Pikmin. They also let you change where the ship is placed on the map, making it quicker to collect treasures nearest where you are. The night mode is also cool, with it offering a kind of defense mode, with you using the glow Pikmin to fight off enemies and protect the nests. Apart from all that, the big problems I have with the game are mainly the caves, and with that the mission mode, or lack of it. In Pikmin 3, the game had a great mission mode with unique levels that really made you think and strategize, along with some stupidly hard DLC levels. In Pikmin 4, they have brought back the basic idea, but massively vanillafied it, with the maps looking all pretty much identical, which is my main complaint with the caves in general. I don't mind there being some caves as filler content, but the game went way overboard with it. The amount of overworld stuff to do is far less than in Pikmin 3, which is part of the reason I prefer 3. Also, the music didn't seem nearly as good this time round, with it being awfully quiet and hard to hear. But apart from those issues, the game is still very good, with great areas to explore and rock Pikmin. Many rock Pikmin. Like with Mario Wonder, I hope we get Pikmin 5 sooner than later. Maybe even DLC. Perhaps mission mode could come back.